I have felt unsafe for pretty much my whole life. And the reason why I say that is because I'm attuning to my body and I'm seeing like, whoa, you've been kind of stuck in this like fawn response of pleasing or this flight response of making it perfect or procrastinating or this, sort of freeze response of just like disassociating, shutting down in ways, and just realizing that like this is kind of how I've navigated my life. And I look back and it makes sense, but I kind of really just realized how real this has been. And it's disheartening, to be honest. So, with that being said, I also have newer insights about what do we do with this energy. Because I realized that I am here to lead. I'm here to help the individual that knows they are also here to lead and be different and have their full expression online. And what's really coming through for me right now is, how do you put yourself first? Because I know for myself and many of the people that are watching this and many of the clients I've worked with, because we've been unsafe, our focus has been so much on other people. Now, I've been calling a lot of this, the framework for this work, Emotional Alchemy. I'm sitting with the fact that I feel like even calling it Emotional Alchemy is incomplete, because I'm bringing in insights from human design. But nonetheless, I want to share with you how some of what I feel is the best ways to be able to process a lot of what's coming up. Particularly, I want to look at relationship to business, because relationships in general are great mirrors, great things that can trigger reactions in us. And so I want to look at how you can use your business as a way to create more of this creative freedom and as a way to work through a lot of these triggers or a lot of these things that might get in the way, because it can be kind of hard to see them without actually having, a relationship dynamic, since a lot of these things were formed in relationship.
Okay, so let's talk more about this emotional alchemy process. So we are going to touch on two key things. One is going to be the relational experience between you and your business. And then the other thing that we're going to touch on is how you can use your mechanics of your human design to aid you in this alchemical process. Okay? So, one, when we look at the business, right, as a relationship, like any relationship, you are going to get triggered, right? You're supposed to get triggered because these are ways that you are wanting to expand. So, for example, let's say that you want to charge a certain amount, right? Or you want to invite in a specific type of person, right? And you might have relational things come up. I know for me, rejection is like a really core wound for me. So a lot of those things, my body might have triggers because it doesn't want to experience that process of rejection. Now, the big thing in this process, right, is you want to understand that you are getting this insight for a reason. You are getting this download for a reason. You are intuitively feeling, ooh, I want to create this. I want to talk to this person. I want to make this. This feels like an appropriate exchange of pricing, etc. Right? If you're really listening to yourself, you are getting this guidance, or you are responding to the world and seeing what actually makes sense for you. So the big thing is to understand that that guidance is not accidental, right? It's happening for a reason. And so great. We first want to tune to that. Now, the second thing that's really, really important for you to see as well is that you having a resistance, you having a trigger is not a bad thing. It's not a reason not to listen to the insights you were getting, right? I was talking to a client, actually, talked to a lot of clients that have this experience, but I was having a really more focused conversation about this with a client a couple of weeks ago. And, the question that he was asking me is, do I just ignore do I separate these things, right? Do I either focus on the healing work, or do I focus on the strategic things that will help my body feel safe to be able to move forward, right? Because he was experiencing resistance when he would price this thing at a certain point. And my insight was really, you want to do both, right? You want to do the healing, do the healing work, right? And you can also leverage strategic things that help you to feel safer. But you really want to be mindful of, are you using strategic things that help you feel safer based on your mechanics, or are you using strategic things that help you feel safer based on a trauma response, right? Like, are you avoiding, or flighting, or freezing, or are you being able to attune to your mechanics and use those things to help you show up in a way that's letting you push your edge, that's honestly engaging you more in this process of the emotional alchemy? And so that's what we'll be able to bring in today, is how are we able to leverage the mechanics so that we aren't avoiding or flighting, or from or freezing from what we're here to do, but we're actually using the mechanics to help us in this process, right? And so what's going to happen is, right, the business is, it's going to show you these ways that you want to expand, right? Show you these ways that you want to grow, show you these ways that you want to feed it, that you want to be fed by it, that you want to be loved by it, that you want to love it, right? And this is going to have a desired way of being expressed, right? Maybe it's, ooh, I want to make this video, and I want to be doing backflips, or I want to be naked, or I want to, whatever wants to be expressed. And then you see the trigger, you see what comes up. Okay. Now, a big thing to understand, as I was alluding to earlier, is that you want to let go of the story that comes up. Whatever story comes up, you want to get to the point where you're able to access more neutrality with that emotion and just be with the sensation that you are experiencing. Because the story, it's not necessary for this process, and the story is, it's not even necessarily true, right? What is real is the sensation that you are feeling, but not necessarily the story that you're attaching to it, right? So you might have a story come up if you want to reach out to someone, right? But that story might be telling you, oh, I'm not good enough for this, or oh, blah blah. If they reject me, it means I'm a failure. Blah blah blah. All this stuff, right? And there's ways to see what the story is, which we're not going to get into right now. But it's just a sensation. So you can let go of the story, and once you let go of the story, you open to this, you'll see, wow, this is actually a portal for me to expand into being able to have the space, capacity, desire for what is already there, right? So there's desire and resistance, but we can shift from desire and resistance. Instead of resistance, it can become force, creative force for the desire, right? And so that's a part of this alchemical process, right? And so a big thing is being with what wants to be expressed. So a lot of what I leverage with my clients, even for myself, is somatic inquiry, somatic experiencing. We're not going to dive into those right now, but really what I would say is attune to what your body wants to do. Does your body want to curl up in a ball? Does it want to lay down? Does it want to cry, dance, write, yell, bang? What's there? Is it anger? A lot of times there's anger that's unprocessed because anger is often an emotion that's we've been told is not appropriate or not safe. Okay, so but being able to process that emotion is actually super important for your business. It's super important for you being able to create what you want in the world. Okay, so that is really, really key. So you want to be able to process what's there. Now, I will show you later how you can get more of my guidance on actually processing these things and actually, yeah, being able to understand what are the stories, and because that's really helpful. But that's a big part of this process, right? And then this process it continues, right? Where you have even more desire, even more expansion after you create some space and you're triggered and you process that. Now, the big thing is you being able to see that the trigger is not here to hold you back. The trigger is here to show you how to love yourself and your business more, right? It's a circular process, okay? You are meant to be with your desires. It's important. It's all God. It's all the emotions, the desire, they're all God. They're all signs. They're all perfect for you. That's why they are happening, okay? Now, what I want to speak to now is your mechanics. So specifically, we're going to be looking at your variables that are really helpful for aiding this alchemical process. Now, these variables are these arrows that you'll see at the top of your chart. And a lot of charts actually don't show the numbers associated with the variables, which more specifically are called like your color. And so we're not going to, but there's a way, I'll put it in the description, a way to get a chart that has this. Okay. Now, what is really beautiful about this is there's two sides to this, right? But these can help you move through resistance and be more resilient. Because a lot of times when we're going through this process, things feel like they're falling apart. We just want to be able to make some sense of it. A big part of the healing process, as you probably know, is letting yourself become dysregulated, is letting yourself surrender. But it's still often helpful to have some grounding in that process. And you can have some grounding in that process by working with someone like me that can help you to reflect back and make sense of it. And so I'll share a little bit of some of that work, but also for yourself, what can be helpful is knowing, having a helpful way of interpreting it, because that's so much of the alchemical process is how do you interpret the trigger, how do you interpret the processing? Are you then using that energy as fuel, or are you stagnating there because you are like, this isn't working? Okay, because you can also get lost in the emotion and use the emotion as a way to avoid the creation that is meant to come through you or desires to come through you. So when it comes to attuning to your mechanics, you see these variables on the left side as well as on the right side. So the ones on the left side, I like to characterize them as more like well-being, things that support your well-being. And then the ones on the right side are the ones that I feel are really helpful for you making sense of this healing process. Obviously, everything works together, but that's a way to frame these things, characterize these things. So I'm going to quickly just talk through the ones on the left and right, just because I think they all can be helpful, but I'm going to focus on the ones on the right side. Okay, so on the left side, these variables on the left side, these are things that are really helpful for your well-being, right? So the variable at the top is it's called your determination, and there's different levels to it, right? There's the color level, there's a tone level, and there's a base level. we are good. We are not going to go too deep into this, but I'm gonna reference color level and tone level when it comes to the alchemical healing. So when we look at the well-being part, right, your determination can help you really understand what's a helpful way for you to feel fed, right? For you to feel nourished, right? When it comes to your diet, right? When it comes to content, digesting content, when it comes to your lifestyle. Okay. So the next thing that I'll just briefly speak on is if we look at your environment, right? Mine is markets, right? So what can be really helpful for me is an environment that's kind of like a marketplace. Like that's why cities or like centers are really good for me. Like when I was here in Tulum, initially I was kind of far out, and I would always want to come to this main strip where there's so much happening. There's so many cafes, there's so many people, right? And I really thrive in those types of environments. I get really energized by those types of environments. So anytime I need to like get something done, I realize I'm procrastinating on something, sometimes just putting myself in like a co-working space or like a cafe or something like that, it's really, really helpful for me. So those are our brief thoughts on how you can use these two variables as far as well-being wise. But what I really want to focus on is these variables over here on the right, okay? Because these are, I noticed, are really helpful for the actual healing process, right? For the, especially the alchemical process, right? Because the two variables on the right side, these are really helpful for you being able to a make sense of the world, and then b be able to see opportunity. And so much of what I mean by emotional alchemy is how can we take this resistance and then be able to actually use it in our creation, right? Use it as a force, use it as something that's beneficial to us. So one thing, when we look at the top is the top arrow is your motivation, right? This is really how you are making sense of what's happening in the world, how you're making sense of what's happening to you, right? And so please don't take these words literally, because they have specific definitions that are more aligned, right? Like one word you might see here is like guilt, right? And guilt is and when we think about guilt, we don't think about that as a healthy motivation. But for some people, the way in the human design terms, guilt is actually their most aligned motivation, like feeling like, yo, I owe myself, or I owe this person, or like and that can be really motivating for them, making sense and helpful, and make them making sense of the world. So I'll just speak from my perspective. My motivation is hope, right? And so what you'll notice is there's often a transference that's three away. So my transference is kind of like the not self of it. My not self is like guilt. So when I'm actually in guilt, that's actually not the most aligned for my mechanics, although it can be for someone else. What's most aligned for my mechanics is hope, and the tone can help me understand more of how I can be most effective with that motivation. So mine, in this case, is more left leaning. It's more strategic, more masculine. And mine specifically is action, right? And so basically, what this means is when I attune to hope and then I take action from that place, that is really beneficial for me to be, for my mechanics, for me to be motivated. So let's say I'm going through this process and I notice I'm hitting resistance, or I'm feeling triggered, or yada, 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 or I'm trying to just make sense of things, feel like they're crumbling, falling apart. When I can tune into hope and then take action from that place, I just have so much energy and so much flow, right? And I'm able to go from that resistance to that creative power a lot more effectively. Okay? Now that might not be the same for you. You might have a different motivation in your design, but that is how it works for me. Okay, now the next thing that I want to speak on is your perspective. Okay, now perspective is really helpful for how you can see opportunities. So, once again, when we're thinking about this process of using these emotions as portals, as ways to create, as ways to quantum leap, right? There might be different ways that you use that. And I like to actually blend the motivation and the perspective together, because I find that, yes, you want to know what moves you, what can help you to get motivated, but also being able to not just make sense of the world, but also see opportunities in what's happening is really effective when those two can be used together, right? And so, to give you an example, mine is probability, but unlike my motivation, my probability, it's more right leaning, right? If you think about left brain, right brain. So my perspective, it's actually more the mechanics of it are more passive. They're less penetrating and focused, right? And so my perspective being probability, the way I'm able to use this to give you an example, right? Because the tone of it is for, you'll see it, which is, if I zoom in, meditation. Okay, so the way that this looks for me to really ground this is being able to like visualize, or just having moments where I'm just able to daydream, or even being in meditation, or I notice oftentimes like before bed or in the middle of the night where I'm just able to just think and dream, right? That's where I'm able to see a lot of opportunities. And a lot of the way I see the opportunities is I'm able to be like, well, what is the chance of this being effective? And and a lot of these chance opportunities that I'm able to see are how I'm able to access them a lot just when I'm sitting, daydreaming, when my nervous system is regulated, when I'm not in fight or flight, right? And so, what it'll look like for me is I will just be chilling, or in the middle of the night, or before bed, or just on a walk, even meditating, just like sitting in meditation often. And I'll have these understandings of like, oh, this is a great opportunity here in this process that I'm going through, right? Let's say, I'm moving through some heaviness, or I'm seeing, hey, this isn't working, or this isn't working. And if I just kind of tune in that way, I'm able to see like, oh, well, this thing that I thought wasn't working, here's actually an opportunity that's being created, right? And I'm able to see the probability of that opportunity creating more of what I want, right? When I'm able to calm my nervous system. So it's interesting, right? Because there's part of me that's able to see a lot of these opportunities in a more reflective, meditative process. But that also needs to be combined with a sense of hope and a sense of action for my mechanics, because the hope and the action allow me to actually execute on it, and actually have positive expectations for it. So basically, I use both of those together, right? And so what you'll notice is in this process, there's a lot of energy that's getting freed up as you are, processing something and moving through triggers, etc. There's a lot of energy that gets freed up. But it can be easy, as I said earlier, to stick in the emotions, to maybe even fall in love with the emotions and just want to be with the frustration, the anger, the sadness, and just plop there, right? But or feel like, what's the point, right? But when you can recognize, ooh, what actually gets me motivated, and what can help me make sense of this, and what can help me see opportunities, then it's a lot easier to take that energy and right? And turn that into creating more of what you want. So this is just a part of really what I love to see as being able to see how you're different, see how you work, see your genius, and use those things to grow your business. Right. So what we spoke about a little bit now was the emotional process and a little bit of the attuning to your mechanics. And this is a lot of the work that's done in my self-paced program, Aligned Ascension. Right. So Aligned Ascension is a program that allows you to really attune to your mechanics, leverage your emotions, leverage your genius, right? Use these things in your marketing, create structures that are supportive for you, and be able to use those things to grow your business. So if that is something you want, you will see in the description a link to Aligned Ascension. There's a beautiful special being run right now for that. And there's ways to get a little bit of one-on-one guidance from me in that process, if that is something that you want to add on as an option within Aligned Ascension. So check the description and you'll be able to see that. And if that feels aligned for you, I would love to have you inside and be able to share this